In the town of Willow Creek, a single mom served coffee to people who didn't know her name. A millionaire in a cheap jacket watched every choice she made. When rent came due and the jokes got cruel, she didn't know her smallest kindness was the test that would change her life. This isn't a story about money. It's about who you are when no one's clapping. If you've ever been judged by your clothes, your job, or your past, listen closely. The bell above the door at Riverside Diner had a tired ring, like it had been laughing at people for 30 years. The floor tiles were checkered, the coffee endless, and the regulars predictable. Contractors by 6, teachers by 7, retirees by 8. Sarah Whitmore, apron tied in a careful bow, moved table to table like a small storm you were grateful for. Quick, warm, efficient. She remembered how you took your eggs and who shouldn't get caffeine after noon. Sarah was 31 with a 9-year-old son, Evan, who collected baseball cards and bad report cards equally. She rented the smallest unit above the laundromat, where Thursdays smelled like detergent and cheap cologne. Her car coughed more than it drove. Her savings account was a rumor, but she smiled with her whole face and counted tips like blessings, even the ones left in pennies, to make a point. The town of Willow Creek pretended to be gentle. It was beautiful in fall, brutal in January, and gossip moved faster than the river in spring. People didn't mean to be cruel. They simply believed money was proof of virtue and poverty, proof of something else. At the far booth, under the taxidermy trout, a new customer sat alone, a man in a cheapo work jacket with a neat beard and quiet eyes. He ordered black coffee and steel-cut oats, tipped 20% without making a show of it, and read the local paper like he actually cared about last Friday's high school game. His name, he said, was Mike. Sarah noticed him the way good servers do. Does he need a refill, extra napkins, a minute to think? He noticed her the way serious people do, not the pretty face or the tired feet, but the way she carried dignity like a second apron. He watched her say sir to a roofer who wouldn't look up, hun to a widow whose hands shook, and no charge to a little girl who'd dropped her hot chocolate. On his third day in, a trio of real estate agents drifted to the counter, polished smiles, sideways glances, whispers loud enough to be heard on purpose. Single mom, 2 shifts, still late on rent, one said, tapping her card on the laminate. Another laughed. Dreams bigger than tips, she murmured, eyes sliding toward Sarah. Cute though. Sarah wiped down a perfectly clean spot. You learn, after a while, not to take every dart out of your skin. You learn that some people need your pain to feel tall. Everything all right? Mike asked when she refilled his cup. Always, Sarah said. Coffee's hot, bills are due, sun came up. That's a win. He smiled. Honest scoreboard. When the morning rush thinned, a trucker counted singles on the counter, came up short. He paled. I'll wash dishes, he offered, voice low. I'm good for it, next run. Sarah didn't ask Mike or the manager. She slid her own tips into the register and rang the sale. Happens, she said. Pay it forward. The trucker nodded, eyes shining. He left a thank you scribbled on a napkin. Mike watched her tuck the napkin into her apron like a medal. There are tests you can study for, interviews you can rehearse, and then there are the quiet exams life gives you at 10:13 a.m. on a Wednesday when no one's clapping. Sarah passed without knowing she'd been tested. Willow Creek's soundtrack was the squeal of school buses and the scrape of snow shovels. The diner's soundtrack was commentary about interest rates, gas prices, and other people's lives. That week, the subject was Sarah. Sweet girl, one woman told another at the counter. But she should have married that electrician when she had the chance. She was 19, the other sniffed. He drank. Still better than no husband, the first decided, as if choosing an entree. When Sarah brought their checks, they smiled like they were being generous with mercy. We're praying you find a good man, one said. Girls like you need protection. Protection from what? Sarah asked. Rent. They blinked. She smiled. Thank you. I'll take all good wishes. She slid 2 mugs to the warmer and breathed. At the back booth, Mike scribbled something on a yellow legal pad, then closed it when she looked over. He worked from that booth like it was an officer laptop open sometimes, a stack of mail others. Once, a business magazine was tucked inside the local paper. She caught the title Fortune in glossy letters before he flipped the page. "Working on anything good?" she asked. "Always," he said. "What about you?" "Trying to keep the hash browns crispy and my hope warm," Sarah replied. "One's harder than the other." After the lunch rush, Gina, the line cook, with a voice like a gravel road, tossed a rag at Sarah playfully. "He looks at you," Gina said, chin flicking toward the back booth. "He looks at the menu," Sarah said. "He looks at you like he's reading a book. He doesn't want anyone to know he's enjoying." Gina grinned. Careful of what?" Sarah asked, bristling. "Having a conversation." "I'm a server. He's a customer." "Careful of hope," Gina said quietly. "It's a beautiful liar when rent's due." Sarah knew her numbers too well to argue. The eviction notice had been folded and unfolded so many times the paper was soft, like cloth. She was 9 days out from a deadline, one broken timing belt away from a disaster. That night, after Evan fell asleep on the couch, watching a YouTube video about the fastest MLB pitches, Sarah opened the notice again. The landlord wasn't cruel. He was tired of promises. She'd paid late too many times. He wanted a tenant who didn't measure months by tips. Down below the apartments, washing machines roared like airplanes. Sarah leaned against the warm dryer and counted the reasons the universe owed her a break. Came up empty. Then she counted the people who would miss her smile at 7:15 a.m. Came up full. "I'm not quitting," she told the hum of the dryer. "Even if I have to sell the car and walk to work." Sometimes resolve is a prayer without an amen. The next morning Mike came in later than usual, jacket dusted with snow. He looked different, baseball cap low, jacket scuffed, no laptop. He took a stool at the counter instead of the back booth. "Switching up your routine?" Sarah asked as she poured coffee, trying to see the place from a different angle. He said, "You learn more that way." Gina slid a plate of blueberry pancakes to him. "Special today," she said. "I didn't order," he replied. "I know," Gina said. "Eat. You look like a man who reads the fine print and forgets to taste the blueberries." He laughed, then noticed Sarah slip a to-go bag across the counter to a high schooler in a Letterman jacket who had pretended not to be hungry. "Don't tell Coach," she whispered. "He'll make you run extra for the muffin." The kid grinned and sprinted out with the bag tucked like a football. "Do you do that often?" Mike asked. "Do what?" Sarah said. "Cover the gap and keep the dignity." "Only when no one's looking," Sarah smiled. "Too many thank yous ruin the gift." He studied her, the way you study a skyline at dusk, something ordinary turning golden. Mike dropped more bills than necessary at the register and left without his change. Sarah slid the extra into the staff coffee fund without blinking. 2 days later, he came in a pressed wool coat, hair combed, the cheap jacket gone. He took a call at the booth, hushed, efficient, full of words like board, closing, revised offer. When Sarah approached, he shot her an apologetic look and ended the call. "Sorry, no problem," she said. "Big day. Depends on what you measure," he said. "I'm starting to take different measurements." He returned that afternoon in the cheap jacket again, as if to cleanse the palate. He ordered soup and watched the door. A woman in a pencil skirt and trench coat entered with a portfolio and eyes that measured the room only once. She slid into his booth. "Michael," she said, clear, crisp, "your board wants a press timeline. You promised to decide by Thursday." "Thursday's still Thursday," he said. He didn't introduce her to Sarah when she refilled their water. He didn't introduce anyone to anyone. He just watched. People think tests have clipboards. Sometimes they have pancake syrup and coffee rings. When the woman left, Sarah wiped the table and said lightly, "Michael, huh?" "Mike's easier here," he said. "Here," she teased. "At the diner. In rooms where I want to pay attention," he replied. "You should put that on a mug," she said, then immediately wished she hadn't. He smiled anyway. The 9-day deadline became a 3-day deadline. Sarah worked a double, then picked up an overnight cleaning shift at Willow Creek High, scrubbing gum off undersides. of desks while the night watchman hummed old country songs. She got home at 4:10 a.m., slept 90 minutes, then stood in the mirror, rehearsing what dignity looks like when it's exhausted. At the diner, she moved slower. Gina noticed. "Kiddo," she said, "you're a hummingbird on a hurricane day." "I'm fine," Sarah lied. "Remind me to buy more cereal." Evans on a Lucky Charms kick. By 11:30, the counter crowd had turned mean. People treat their servers like mirrors. They project what they need to see. A man in a designer fleece snapped his fingers for more lemon. A woman filmed her avocado toast like it gave her an identity. One of the real estate agents from earlier laid $5 flat on the counter and said, "Earn the rest." Sarah's hand shook, then steadied. "We don't play that game," she said softly, sliding the bill back. "Tip what you like, but don't make people dance for it." The woman laughed, then said something crude under her breath about waitresses and their standards. Mike set down his cup and stood not confrontational, just present. People back down faster when kindness takes a shape. "You okay?" he asked Sarah later, in the quiet near the pie case. "Define okay," she said, eyes bright. "I'm vertical. My kid's lunch is paid for. I have a roof until Friday." "Until Friday?" he asked. She exhaled. There it was. She'd kept that one in the dark as long as she could. "Yeah, it's okay. I'll figure it out." "How?" he asked kindly. She smiled without humor. "Same way I always do. Grit, tips, and 2 miracles." He nodded like she'd confirmed a math problem. "Ever think about different work?" he asked. "Every Tuesday at 3 a.m., she said. "But Willow Creek remembers everything. I was the girl who dropped out for a year when I had Evan. I came back, got my GED, but some doors locked from the inside." He didn't offer advice or pity. He picked up his mug and said, "You keep people's dignity intact. That's a skill." "Not on my resume," she said. "Maybe it should be," he replied. That night, Sarah found Evan had taped a crumpled $1.75 to the fridge with blue painter S tape. Next to it, he'd written, "For rent. I love you, Mom." She sat on the kitchen floor with the light off and cried the kind of cry that doesn't make noise because some feelings don't want attention, only release. Thursday came colder than the forecast. The river wore a gray coat and the diner's windows fogged with breath and coffee. Mike arrived in a navy peacoat and a mood that made space. He waited until the lunch rush thinned, then asked Sarah, "You got 10 minutes?" She glanced at Gina. "Take it," Gina said, shooing her with the spatula. "If he's proposing, I want cake." Sarah smiled, followed Mike to the corner by the old jukebox, and folded her hands like she was preparing for bad news. He pulled a thin leather folder from his coat and set it between them. "My name is Michael Barron," he said plainly. "I am the majority owner of Barron & Wexler. We build and operate logistics hubs and distribution centers. I'm in town because we acquired a parcel near the interstate. I hate press releases. I like to see the towns will change." Sarah stared. The name rang a bell. Billboard's news features. An article about a community fund in Ohio. Her cheeks burned. She wasn't embarrassed of herself. She was embarrassed for every time she'd underestimated him. "I wore the jacket," he said, smiling, "because money makes people act. I wanted to see who you are when no one thinks it matters." "I'm not sure if I should be offended or honored," she said. "Honored," he said gently. "You were generous with your own tips. You protect people's dignity. You told a woman to keep her money when she wanted to make you dance." He opened the folder, slid a card forward. Barron & Wexler Community Operations. Under it, her name typed in clean font. Sarah Whitmore, Assistant Outreach and Site Operations. "Tim Tupram, what is this?" She whispered. "A job," he said. "Full-time training paid. Health insurance, starting day 1. Childcare stipend. We need a community operations office here. The person in that chair must know people. Protect dignity. Speak human. You already do the job, you just don't get paid for it." Her brain tried to stand up and kept sitting down. "I don't have the right degree," she said. "You have the right character," he said. "We can teach software. We can't teach you." "What if I fail?" she asked. Then we help you get better, he said simply. No one expects perfect. We expect honest. A tear fell and she didn't bother to wipe it. What about the jacket? She asked, half laughing. He grinned. I burned it. She stared at the card like it could melt. I can't start tomorrow, she said, panic rising. There's rent. I don't want to ask for. He slid another document forward. Barron Community Relief Fund, emergency grant receipt. It was already signed. Consider it back pay, he said, for all the kindness you credited to the house account. She shook her head. I can't. You already did, he said gently, when you chose people over pride, again and again. This isn't charity. It's a hire. The bell above the door rang. Life went on, but at the corner table by the jukebox, a small future unlatched. The first week felt like standing in front of a host badges, logins, onboarding portals, acronyms stacked on acronyms. But every day came with Earl Grey tea and a sticky note from Michael, one step at a time. Ask 3 questions before you decide. Your instincts are your edge. Sarah liked the work more than she admitted. Community operations meant listening first and translating second. She met with the high school principal about a forklift certification pathway, called the food bank director to schedule surplus deliveries, brought donuts to the union guys, and asked what would actually help. She didn't promise what she couldn't deliver. And she didn't forget to call Evan at 3:45 to ask if he'd eaten the apple she packed. He hadn't. She pretended to be shocked. In the evenings, she still worked one shift at the diner, not for the money, for the reminder. Humility is easier to keep when you stay near the you of last month. Gina barked orders like always. Are you fancy now? She asked, flipping pancakes. Should I curtsy? Curtsy, and I'm quitting. Sarah laughed, kissing her cheek with gratitude big enough to taste. The town split. Some people cheered, some shrugged, a few called it luck. None noticed the years of small right choices stacked like bricks under the sudden door. At Barron and Wexler, Michael didn't hover. He removed obstacles. When a department head tried to big dog Sarah in a meeting with jargon and impatience, Michael said, Sarah's questions are our metrics. If we can't explain it to Willow Creek, it isn't real. People in this town will still be cruel, Sarah told him after one particularly sticky public forum, where a man accused the company of parading charity to hide greed. They might, Michael said, but we'll be consistent. Also, many are quietly relieved someone is finally paying attention to the right measurements. What are the right measurements? She asked. How many people go home with dignity? He said. How many kids see a parent at dinner because shifts got predictable? How often a waitress doesn't have to cover a meal from her tips? She nodded, throat tight. That one's personal. I know, he said. By month 2, she had negotiated a childcare credit pilot with 3 local centers, built a rideshare board for second-shift workers, and found a way to turn warehouse pallet wood into free raised garden beds for seniors. She wrote the press release herself, with the plain sentences she'd learned at the counter. It read like a person, not like a brand. One afternoon, Evan biked to her small glass-walled office after school. He pressed his nose to the window and grinned like a man on the moon. Mom has an office, he told the receptionist, awed, with her name. Want to see the break room? She asked. Only if there are donuts. There are always donuts. He sat in her chair, spinning once. Is this what rich feels like? He asked. No, she said, kneeling to his level. This is what steady feels like. Rich is loud, steady is quiet. He nodded solemnly, like she'd handed him a map. A year later, Willow Creek didn't look different on a postcard. The river still curled around the mill. The diner still served pancakes. The bell still laughed when the door opened, but something underneath had changed. Schedules, conversations, measurements. The cruel jokes had gotten quieter, not because the mean people moved away, but because dignity had gotten louder. Sarah still worked a weekly diner shift by choice. She'd show up, tie her old apron, and let Gina yell. Regulars teased her about being corporate, then asked for community grants for their little league team. She made them fill out forms like everyone else. Dignity has rules. One Saturday, The same real estate agent who'd once laid $5 flat on the counter walked in cautious. "My sister's kid," she murmured, cheeks pink, "needs a first job. He's lost. Could your company help?" "Yes," Sarah said. No lecture, no gloat. She printed the application and said, "Tell him to start with the truth. We can work with that." Michael kept his office in the city, but made Willow Creek his favorite detour. He and Sarah never dated in the first year towns talk, and growth needs clean air. They became allies first, the kind who could argue about budget line items and then share a slice of pie without keeping score. On the anniversary of the job offer, he took the back booth under the trout and waited with 2 coffees. "Why here?" she asked, sliding into the seat. "Because this is where I decided your name goes on a door," he said. He set a small box on the table, not jewelry, a key card with her name engraved in metal. "Director, Community Operations, Willow Creek Region." "You sure?" she asked. "I was sure the day you slid your tips into the register for a stranger," he said. "This just catches up." She swallowed. "Thank you. Don't thank me," he said. "Keep measuring what matters." From the counter, a teenager in a Letterman jacket paid for a coffee and left a napkin note. "Thanks for the job last summer." Sarah tucked it into her bag, next to the old trucker's thank you, the one that had started this second life. Before they left, Michael looked around the diner like a man checking a blueprint. "You know," he said, "wealth is loud, but character is the thing you notice when you think nobody's watching. You taught me to look for that again." "I didn't teach you," Sarah said. "I just kept doing dishes." They stepped into the late afternoon sun, winter loosening its fist. Across the street, Evan and 3 friends laughed on their bikes. He waved with the easy joy of a kid who knows dinner will be on the table and the light bill is paid. Narrator gentle. Willow Creek never put up a statue for Sarah Whitmore. It didn't need to. It had shorter lines at the food bank, steadier schedules at the warehouse, a second shift vent pool, and a director's office with an open door. It had a waitress who kept a shift she didn't need, because some altars look like formica and smell like coffee. And if you asked a town what changed, most folks would say respect began to move like gravity. It pulled people toward kinder measurements. It kept the cruel from floating too high in their own story. It lifted the tired, the honest, the steady. Don T. Judge people by where they start or by what they wear when they trying to stay afloat. The real wealth is respect, and the smallest kindness you think no one sees might be the test that opens your next door. If this story reminded you that character beats cash and respect is wealth, tap like, comment, respect if you've seen a small kindness change a life, and subscribe for tomorrow's story because someone you love may need a reminder that their quiet choices matter the most.